Hey everyone. So let's talk about something that hits close to home for so many people, the state of U.S. immigration. After what feels like years of being stuck in neutral, we're actually starting to see some real, genuine signs of progress. Let's dive in and see what's really going on. So here's the big question, right? Is the U.S. immigration system finally moving forward? After all the waiting and all the uncertainty, is it actually starting to function again? That's a totally fair question. And today, we're going to break down what the signs on the ground are telling us. And look, let's just be real for a second. That wait, it's heavy. The years of long waits, the applications that seem to disappear into a black hole, the sheer uncertainty of it all, it has been an unbelievably stressful journey for so many families. We get that frustration. We really do. But here's the thing, and this is so important. While the system is definitely still strict, it's not defined by that same old chaos anymore. We're seeing a really significant shift towards predictability in a few key areas, and honestly, that alone is bringing some genuine relief. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to break down 4 key areas. First, the gains in green card processing. Then we'll look at the new stability around work permits and visas. Third, we'll talk about policy and enforcement. And finally, we'll get into what this all means on a human level. Okay, first up, green cards. And the big story here isn't necessarily about lightning speed. It's about predictability. It feels like the system is finally shifting gears from just being stuck to actually being consistent. This really sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you have the past, just a mess of unpredictable delays. And on the other, where we are now in January 2026, you have something much more predictable. For families who've done everything right, this means they can finally have a realistic idea of a timeline.
So you might be wondering, who is actually seeing this progress? Well, USCIS seems to be really focused on a few groups. Immediate relatives of U.S. citizens. We're talking spouses, parents, and young kids. Also, family-based cases that were filed right here in the U.S. are seeing movement. And for work-based applications, it's those with current priority dates. Now, a priority date is basically just your spot in line. Current just means the line is moving for your category, so your case can finally get reviewed. It's targeted progress for sure, but it's making a huge difference for these groups.
All right, let's shift gears to work permits and visas. Because for anyone trying to build a life and career here, this all comes down to one word: continuity. Okay, this is a really interesting one. There's been a kind of trade-off when it comes to work permits, or EADs as you probably know them. USCIS has actually made them valid for a shorter period. And at first glance, that sounds bad, right? But it seems like they're doing it to make the workload more manageable, which is letting them process renewals way faster and more reliably. So the key takeaway here is pretty simple. If you file your renewal on time, you are much, much less likely to have a gap where you can't work. It's a trade-off, for sure, but it's one that favors stability. And hey, this isn't just happening for folks inside the U.S. We're seeing this positive trend with visa processing at consulates abroad, too. The National Visa Center is getting more efficient, they're clearing out those old backlogs, and they're scheduling more interviews. It's a slow and steady march, but it's a march back to normal. Okay, our third big topic, policy and enforcement. And the theme here is that even within a strict system, we're seeing more clarity and a much more focused approach. Now, let's tackle something that causes a ton of anxiety: deportation. The focus continues to be on individuals with serious criminal records. That means for the vast majority of law-abiding applicants who are just waiting patiently with a pending case, you're not the primary target. And having that clarity in policy, man, that is a huge deal. It helps reduce that constant fear of random enforcement actions. And, you can't overstate this. In the world of immigration, just having stability, that is a massive victory in itself. When policies are clear and applied the same way every time, it allows families and even businesses to plan for the future with a level of confidence that just wasn't possible before. So let's zoom out from the policies and the paperwork for a minute for our last section, because what does all of this actually mean for real people, for real lives? I love this quote from the source material we looked at. It just hits the nail on the head. Because for someone who's been stuck in this process for years, these aren't just small wins or bureaucratic tweaks. These are absolutely 100% life-changing moments. I mean, just think about it for a second. Can you imagine the feeling, the sheer relief of getting that approval notice in the mail after years of absolute silence? The security of renewing your work permit and knowing you won't lose your job? The hope you feel walking into a visa interview you thought might never happen? That is the human side of all this progress.
So look, let's be real. Is the system perfect? No. Is it still difficult? Absolutely. But the big message for 2026 is that it's moving, it's functioning, it's not stuck anymore. And for so many people, that movement is finally forward.
So that leaves us with the big question, right? Is this stability here to stay? Is this the new normal? It's probably too early to say for sure, but for the first time in what feels like forever, there's real momentum, and it's pointing forward.